will be presented today. The total score consists of 70% of the preliminary evaluation and 30% of the presentation evaluation today. Each presenter will have 5 minutes for presentation and 5 minutes Q&A from the jury only. It's not open to the floor. And our staff will notify any overtime, so you only get 5 minutes. First, we will invite Mr. Min-seok Park from the Republic of Korea. He will give a presentation about protection of human rights of the unregistered children in the Republic of Korea, focusing on the universal birth registration.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Park Min-seok, and today it is a very great honor for me to deliver this presentation regarding the human rights essay with the topic of how to protect the unregistered children in the Republic of Korea, focusing on the universal birth registration. Since I have only 4 minutes and 40 seconds, I will make it relatively brief so I can make it in time. So I will first introduce the basic backgrounds and why this issue is important, and then move on to what is UPR and the response from the Republic of Korea, and then I'll move on to the UPR as one of the international mechanisms in order to facilitate the implementation of the UPR into the Republic of Korea, and then I will conclude my presentation. So first of all, there are 2 of the 9 major international human rights treaties, which are first UNCRC and second is ICCPR. And looking into the human rights treaties, the Article 7 and the Article 24, it stipulates that every child in the world has the right to immediate registration after birth, and also the right to acquire name and nationality. So, and the Republic of Korea is also the part of the member of the UNCRC and the ICCPR, so it means that the Republic of Korea has its utmost responsibility and also its duty to provide nationality, name, and provide immediate registration at the birth to every child and every child who are born within the territory of the Korean Peninsula. The reason why this issue is important is because that when the children who are born is not registered, then despite any excellent human rights protection mechanism, that child cannot be under the protection. So the child will biologically exist, but the child will not legally exist. So providing this universal birth registration is one of the most fundamental steps in guaranteeing the human rights of the children. And currently in South Korea, according to these 2 acts and law, the parents have to register within 30 days. But if the parents, they do not register their newborn children on purpose, then those children will become unregistered. So there is current blind spot. And in the case of immigrants and refugees in our case, or in the case of the foreigners, even though the number of the foreigners are increasing as the year goes by, still there are numerous children of the immigrants and refugees who are not registered as the human being. So, even though the Republic of Korea has such responsibility, since it has not fulfilled such responsibility, there has been some recommendations from other states to provide the UBR, but the South Korea has actually technically denied because with the 2 excuses. The first, registration in the embassy of the foreigner is possible in the Republic of Korea, and also the foreign registration is possible. However, those 2 are not unjustifiable because, well, first of all, there are states without embassy in the Republic of Korea, and that is very hard for those parents to register its children. And also, the registration as a foreigner, does not meet the requirements of the international schemes. So why the Republic of Korea opposes UBR was mentioned in the former UPR session, and here I'll skip. And so I thought that there should be two principles when adopting such mechanism. So first, to the nationals, then the sovereignty should proceed rather than the international responsibility. And also, there should be a cost and benefit analysis, and only when the benefit is larger than the cost, then the state should implement the policy and also have some complementary measures in order to minimize the cost of that policy. So I thought that the South Korean government should take a two-track approach differently to the Korean nationals and also the foreign nationals. In case of the Korean nationals, the South Korean sovereignty should be emphasized, and South Korean sovereignty is important. So the international society should respect the South Korean government's decision to not implement the UBR. However, regarding the foreigners, if they're unregistered in the Korean Peninsula, their human rights are severely damaged and they cannot live as a human being in this territory. So in that case, I thought that even though 10 seconds are left, the human rights protection and the responsibility of the international society is more important than the sovereignty. So I thought that UPR would be one of the mechanisms, I will make it in 30 seconds, sorry, so that this would work as a verification and surveillance and pressure method onto the Republic of Korea, and it has such pros and cons. So what matters at last is that despite any suggestion from the international society, what matters the most is the action of the South Korean government. So a conclusion is that even though the South Korean government's responsibility and South Korean government's decisions to be respected, but still the universal responsibility as a member of international society is also very important. So the South Korean government should take a two-track approach, and in the long run, the resolution of the Republic of Korean government is the most crucial factor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. Just a simple question. Would you be able to briefly summarize for us the principal reasons behind the South Korean government's reluctance to adopt a universal birth registration system like we have in other countries? Thank you.
Just a second, please. For me? Please go ahead. One more. Okay. There are many, thank you for the question. There are two reasons why the South Korean government is not trying to implement UBR. The first reason is that when the UBR is implemented, then it becomes mandatory and automatic for the hospital to register the newborn child directly. So in that case, when there are those unwed mothers and the single mothers who does not want their giving birth to be known as a public and to be recorded, they would not try to give birth at the hospital, but they would try to give birth in places other than the hospital. So the Republic of Korea and its government has a concern that it might be a danger to the health of both mothers and the infants. So that is the first reason. And the second reason is that it could be rather passing the responsibility and passing the buck to the hospital, which should be done by the parents currently according to the Korean Civil Law and Family Registration Act. So the Korean government has to first amend its civil law and also the Family Registration Act in order to adopt the universal birth registration. So there are several concerns and things to go over before adopting the UBR in the South Korea.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to clarify. So you said one of the concerns is that single mothers, they want the birth of children to be known to the public. I don't really get that because it's just a registration, right? So it's not like the government's going to publicize that. So that's one question I want clarification. Now the second question is in relation to foreigners. Yeah, so if you register them, they're still stateless, aren't they? So does that actually address your question about registered children being stateless in South Korea? Thank you.
So regarding the first question, those mothers, when the they're giving birth, is officially recorded and officially when it becomes public and officially recorded under the Korean civil law and the several laws in Korea, that mother naturally gets the responsibility and the duty that they should provide the custody for the children. But those single mothers and unwed mothers, they lack their capability in order to provide sufficient custody for the children. So in that case, they do not want their giving birth to be publicly known. So there is a possibility that they might try to give birth in places other than the hospital, which will become detrimental to the both infant and the mothers. And the second is that the UDR says that universal registration of every child, regardless of the place of birth and parents' legal status. So in the Republic of Korea, well, currently the Republic of Korea gives the nationality if one of the persons is currently is Korean. So we have to decide further whether we're going to give the Korean nationality to those newborns who are born inside the Republic of Korea, or whether we are going to follow and track the nationality of the parents so that we can contact with the embassy or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of that state in order to provide the legal status and also the nationality of that home country. Just one more to add. So currently, many states are asking, and when we see the third cycle, many states, including Iran and some other countries, about like 4, has been requesting Republic of Korea to adopt the universal birth registration. So it believes that that such states have to understand that ROK is in such concern, and they should also support ROK, that when it becomes really difficult for the ROK to give the nationality of the South Korea because the current Korean civil law does not allow, then I believe that there should be also support and cooperation from other states who are willing to give their nationality if the parents of the born unregistered children belongs to such foreign country.
Thank you, Mr. Park. Now we will have the presentation of Ms. Pui-Kei Chan. The topic is improvements of the right to water in China under human rights mechanism. Could Ms. Chan please come up to the front?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very honored to stand here today and share with you our basic necessity, which is water. No matter who we are, we cannot live without it. Yet, to my surprise, it was only 8 years ago that the right of water was acknowledged as a fundamental human right. Luckily, the Committee of ICSER in 2002 had already identified water as a prerequisite for realizing that the right of water as a prerequisite of other human rights, and correlate the right to water to Article 11 and Article 12 of the ICSER. However, China as a party to the ICSER ignored this legally binding effect and has violated these 2 articles. Since the reform and opening up, rapid urbanization has driven China into a water-stressed country. Upon evaluation on various aspects, China is found to fail the international standards of the rights to water. First, in terms of adequacy, China's per capita water resources only reach 28% of the world average. As for safety, 85% of water from Shanghai was considered as undrinkable, and 39.9% in Beijing was found to be non-usable in 2015. This posed health-threatening risk to both human and other organisms. Fortunately, accessibility has been enhanced. The Ministry of Water Resources reveals that it has successfully provided 221 million of rural residents access to safe drinking water. To alleviate the problem, regional governments have implemented numerous policies, in which 3 of them are particularly named here. First, to deal with water scarcity, China has conducted water diversion projects by transporting water from the south to the north. And since 2015, it has fulfilled the first of 100 million people. Later on, China prioritized conservation over expanding supply. The Sponge City program utilized porous concrete materials for infrastructures, aiming to capture 70% of rainwater for reusing. This does not only preserve the water resources, but also eliminates the impacts brought by the floods. Further, Water 10 has been launched in April 2015 to tackle water pollution. Since its implementation, 50,000 highly polluting companies ceased operations and over 4 billion yuan of penalties were collected. Despite those accomplishments, the local government failed to execute the enforcement stringently and reach their targets. Worse still, outdated nationwide standards and ineffective usage of water are the other 2 main factors that exacerbate the problem. Yes, water and sanitation is a worldwide issue. The global community can deploy the international human rights mechanism to encourage active enforcement in China. It is mainly divided into charter-based and treaty-based process. Although treaties are only legally enforceable upon ratification, some allege that it could only act as a toothless tiger with no practical punishment system. The success solely depends on the initiative and voluntariness of the states. Also, some states were accused of forming allies to confront dissidents and support blindly despite their non-party status, and this renders the mechanism less effective than expected. Regardless of the backdrop, it also provides an interactive platform for addressing human rights issues and discover solutions. Several advantages are highlighted here. First, transparency could be enhanced. During UPR, the states should publish accurate statistics and disclose its progress in alleviating water pollution, and this allows the community to attain the right to information. Second, accountability could be ensured. During UPR, the states under review have to submit national report periodically to HRC and may face accusations raised by others, making them accountable for their non-compliance. Its reputation and international status are of essence, so even without punishment, the states will be willing to comply. Third, human rights conditions could be monitored more frequently under stringent requirements by independent experts and NGOs. The civil societies can collect their own sets of data and submit shadow reports to the HRC and review the actual situation of water pollution and fresh water supply. To conclude, establishing a peaceful relationship is of essence for promoting international governments and guarantees. Despite the absence of a retribution mechanism, given that there is no other better alternatives, creating a constructive and diplomatic dialogue is probably the best solution to improve human rights conditions worldwide. It is hoped that through adopting the mechanism, China will strive for her excellence in combating water scarcity and pollution with a greater determination. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Enjoyed your presentation. I'd like to ask one question. So, it is very interesting to see when you maintain how to take advantage of the UN human rights mechanism to alleviate the problem. So you suggest several ways, the way in which to improve the situation. But that's the some argument in general. And could you elaborate a little bit more how it can be applied in Chinese situation? For example, the transparency of government policies, or accountability of the member states can be ensured, or monitoring systems, or collaboration with the civil society, NGOs, among the 3 things that you mentioned. Could you elaborate a little bit more?
Okay, sure. First of all, for transparency, it could be enhanced through the UPR process because the government, through disclosing their progress in alleviating water pollution and related statistics, then the community can attain the right to information, and this indirectly enhance the overall quality of life of citizens because they will know whether the water is polluted and which water resources is safe for them to drink. This prevents them from getting ill or being sent to the hospitals because of drinking the polluted water. As for accountability, it can also be ensured because when the effectiveness and pace of implemented policies are being evaluated during the UPR, the states may be worried about facing accusations from other states. So since they are they place international status and prioritize those reputation image as their top agenda, then they would try to comply with those globally recognized charters and treaties voluntarily, even without the punishing mechanism. Especially nowadays, China takes the leadership role in the international context in combating some environmental issues. I believe China will also take this trend in solving the water scarcity and pollution problem. As for the third advantage, which is the human rights condition, can be monitored more frequently by stringent requirements of set up by the independent experts and NGOs. I believe that those independent experts and NGOs and other civil societies, they can carry out some follow-up activities and set up international standards about the human rights. And following these guidelines, the states can set up their own domestic measures and policies on some domestic standards on how to review the water pollution and how to review the water quality in some regional places. Also, with the submit of shadow report by the NGOs, this can, on one hand, prevent the government from covering the scandals or covering the actual situations about the water pollution problem. And on the other hand, if the data provided by the civil societies and those states are genuine, then disclosing those from the civil society can indirectly enhance the reliability and trustworthiness of the national report prepared by the states. And given that if China effectively implements the policies, then this can strengthen and reinforce the legitimacy of China and stabilize its positions in the international context. Thank you.
Just a very quick question, because we only have 50 seconds left, but you mentioned the large-scale infrastructure projects that the Chinese government is currently embarked on to increase the water supply. Could you just mention briefly some of the adverse human rights effects such large projects have? Thank you.
I believe those large infrastructure projects relating to water scarcity may lead to or may require the residents there to relocate to new places for accommodations. This may indirectly harm their human rights or their right to live or right to live in those rural areas. And on the other hand, maybe some cultural heritage will also have to be damaged or destroyed or relocated in other places in order to carry out these large infrastructure projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chan, for your presentation. Next, we'll have Ms. Miho Suzuki from Japan, and she's going to give a presentation on the topic of LGBT rights. We have Ms. Suzuki to the front, please.
A couple of days ago, there was a heavy rain in Tokyo. After rain, what people want to see is a rainbow. A rainbow recently is not just a phenomenon occurring in the sky, but it is a new symbol, a symbol of LGBT. LGBT rights have been gradually recognized in society. However, there is a serious violation of LGBT rights in Japan. Today, I'd like to talk about LGBT rights in Japan. Specifically, I'd like to introduce current situation and suggest solution. And also, lastly, I'd like to talk about what UPR can do to improve LGBT rights in Japan. First, current situation. There are two main human rights issues in Japan. The first one is lack of legal rights. In Japan, same-sex marriage is not legalized, which means same-sex couples are not fully legally approved as a family. Therefore, they do not have access to legal rights that non-LGBT people have. For example, they can hardly get parental authority, inheritance, and supposed sex breaks. So obviously, there is an unfairness between LGBT and non-LGBT people. Second, discrimination. A main cause of this problem is a lack of understanding. So LGBT people tend to face discriminatory speech or behaviors based on their gender identity and sexual orientation. And this discrimination often found in every phase of society. For example, at schools, workplaces, detention facilities, and in the case of emergencies. Second, solution. In order to overcome those problems and protect LGBT rights, I suggest legalization of same-sex marriage as a possible solution. Actually, government of Japan does not show a positive attitude to legalization of same-sex marriage for two reasons. First one is Article 24 of the Japanese Constitution. The Article 24 says marriage should be based on mutual consent of both sexes, so which means man and woman. And for the second reason, in the society, family consisting of mother, father, children has been standardized. So the government of Japan assumes that same-sex marriage might have a great impact on national modality of family. However, those reasons can be debunked. For the first reason, one of the refutations can be made for this first reason is that originally Article 24 does not intend to ban same-sex marriage, but to deter gender inequality in society. For the second reason, currently types of families have been diversified. And so it's uneasy to think that same-sex marriage might have a great impact on the national modality of family. If same-sex marriage were legalized, same-sex couple could fully enjoy the legal rights that non-LGBT people can do. And also, understanding level of LGBT could be raised in the society, and therefore discrimination must be deterred. Lastly, I'd like to talk about what UPR can contribute to legalization of same-sex marriage in Japan, thinking about both disadvantages and advantages of UPR. So there are both advantages and disadvantages of UPR. All states have equal rights to make statements, and reviewing countries one another creates normative pressure to improve human rights situation, and states can get objective opinions on their human rights situations. On the other hand, there is no opportunity to dispute responses that state under review made, and statistically, softer recommendations are increasing. And also, there is no legal force to implement recommendations. Considering those advantages and disadvantages, making action-oriented recommendations is the way that UPR can help the government of Japan to legalize same-sex marriage. Action-oriented recommendation may show the steps that the government should take for legalization and also strengthen the normative pressure to legalize it. Thank you.
thank you very much for your excellent presentation. For the two reasons you mentioned why the government of Japan will not legalize, I wonder though if this is not a case of societal actors in Japan pressuring the government not to legalize rather than these two kind of technical legal issues that you suggest. And I was wondering if you could elaborate more how the UPR process could help societal actors in Japan outmaneuver these more regressive actors. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Well, I believe that legalization of same-sex marriage can be the solution that in a society the discrimination must be deterred. It is because that, well, there was a case that in European countries, I can't remember which country exactly, but there was a statistics that after legalization of same-sex marriage in that country, the discrimination against LGBT people were deterred and also reduced, and also people's acknowledgement and also understanding of LGBT was also reduced after legalization of same-sex marriage. And I believe that if the government of Japan will legalize same-sex marriage, the discrimination could be reduced in society. Thank you.
Thank you, and again, thank you, and congratulations for an excellent presentation. In the first page of your essay, you talked briefly about the institution of same-sex partnership. Could you please tell us something more about this institution as it works in Japan? And then a follow-up question is, instead of legalizing same-sex marriage, would expanding or broadening the scope of same-sex partnership be sufficient to address some of the concerns of the LGBT community in Japan? For example, by attaching some of the legal consequences of marriage to this particular institution. What is your opinion on this? Thank you.
Before I answer the question, I want to clarify the question. In Japan, there is a same-sex partnership. Then I suggest the legalization of same-sex marriage as a solution. Then, so your question is.
The question is first to briefly explain to us how same-sex partnership works in Japan. We have it also in other countries, and whether expanding or broadening this institution, redefining it, might be a solution to addressing some of the concerns of the community, the LGBT community, instead of legalizing same-sex marriage. This is the idea, just expanding it, attaching some of the legal consequences of marriage to that institution. All right? Thank you.
Thank you. So currently, Japan has Japan introduced same-sex partnership 3 years ago. Then, so that was that was a huge step for Japan, because before legal or same-sex partnership was introduced, LGBT people could not have right to become being acknowledged as a partner, officially. So partnership was a huge step and a huge improvement for Japan and also LGBT community. However, same-sex partnership does not approve as same-sex partnership as a family. So it means that the same-sex couples would find legal difficulties in society. So same-sex marriage should be legalized in Japan so that LGBT people can fully obtain their legal rights. Thank you.
Now we will invite the last presenter of today's event. Please welcome Hyun Won, who will deliver the presentation with the topic of freedom of movement. Could you please have Mr. Hyun Won?
Hi.
Hello.
I'm the last one, so it's almost done. So, ganbatte, 자유 fighting. It's almost done. Okay, so I want to talk about the biggest problem that is facing North Korea regarding the human rights issue, which is the freedom of movement. And what is freedom of movement then? Well, according to North Korean Constitution Article 75, they say people have right to travel and live wherever they want. But it's North Korea, so it's not true. In practicality, we have two problems. First of all, technical problem, which is, as Kim Jong-il and Kim Jong-un has said, they have really bad road. And my professor, Dr. Lankov, he has visited North Korea only 3 months ago, and he said road quality has actually gotten worse. It takes 2 weeks if you want to travel from Pyongyang to the border region. That's how bad the travel is. That's why people can really travel inside North Korea. Also, political problem. As you can see from the left corner, there is a permit that you need to travel to other city, and if you don't have permit, you will go to jail for that, so you can't really travel. And also, you can't really live wherever you want, because you'll be, if you're North Korean, of course you're not, but if you're North Korean, you'll be classified into 3 different classes. And if you're a core class, which means if you're loyal to Kim Jong-un, you get to live in Pyongyang. If you're not loyal to Kim Jong-un, which means you're a Hoseo class, that means you cannot live in Pyongyang. You'll be living outside Pyongyang. So people can't really live wherever they want, so they don't have freedom of traveling, freedom of living wherever they want. Now, this is the human right defined by the UN, but however, it can be actually defined into 3 parts: right of equality, right of choice, and right of survival. That's all you need to know about human rights. Now, right of equality and choice is rather obvious, because if you cannot travel, of course, right of equality cannot be met, because as I have mentioned, there is 3 different classes. If you don't live in Pyongyang, you will have different type of equality. Therefore, right of equality is infringed, and also right of choice. As a matter of fact, if you don't travel freely, you cannot go to wherever you want, you cannot get the information you want, you cannot get the goods you want. So right of choice is infringed. And lastly, right of survival. In 1990s, around 3 million people, or 200,000 people died in North Korea because of famine, because they cannot live. However, the government said you cannot travel to wherever you want, so people could not go to the place with food, therefore they died on the spot. So, lack of freedom of movement infringes all these rights. That's why it's the most important right when it comes to North Korea to be addressed. And things started to change in North Korea due to marketization. That's actual market in North Korea, by the way. And marketization was illegal, but it's becoming legalized, and especially in the Kim Jong-un's region, it's getting more and more support from the government. How does it affect the freedom of movement? Markets, so you need goods, therefore you need transportation. You need to import goods and export goods. Due to flourishing of market, the transportation has flourished. Those are actual pictures of North Korea, which was taken in 2014 by Japanese reporter. I heard he died, gunshot, true story. But that's a picture of bus terminal in Pyeongseong, and they have over 200 buses that go to 49 different cities. So transportation, due to the marketization, is flourishing in North Korea. And also, those are the people who are from different areas who are sharing information. They say, I have a problem in my city like this, and I have my city had this kind of problem. What's important here is, thanks to communication, thanks to transportation improvement, people can communicate with the people from other cities. If they can communicate, they can sympathize with other people. Okay, you have this problem, I have this problem. If you have more sympathy, that means you can have more collaborative, more unified voice against government asking for change. So this is diagram. More market means more travel of goods, people, and information. Ergo, there will be more communication between people. More communication between people lead to more united voice from the people for the government asking for change. As a result, the government will be in a position that they have to give more rights to the people. That's why freedom of movement is the most important right in North Korea. What can OHCHR do for this then? As an international stage, although OHCHR doesn't have any political or economic power to propel something, however, they can examine and monitor the status quo. How many people are traveling? What is the most important city for transportation? And they can advise the North Korean government, okay, this is the most important place for transportation. You can have more people, you can have better roads here. After advice, they can make public reports so that other farms, individual farms outside North Korea can know, okay, this is the most important part, maybe we should invest in this part. And we can, OHCHR can also urge the other UN General Assembly or UN councils for the constructive argument, a constructive proposal for North Korea. Now, this is the famous Rosenstrasse protest, which was the only successful protest during the Nazi Germany. It was possible because of a united voice from the people. If the people could make change against Hitler, people could make, in North Korea, change against Kim in the North. Thank you.
Very small question. Thank you for the presentation. Very impressed. More market, more move, and more communication, more rights. Tiny small question. So you mentioned the right of survival, right? Actually, that term, I think that is rarely used in international human rights law or any judicial problem. So does it mean the right to food or right to life? Which one you mentioned when you point out the right of survivor?
The classification that I made was derived from the professor called Park Han-sik. He's a professor in North Korean study. And the right of survival includes everything that you said, especially, it literally means it's a broad definition of the tools people need for survival, such as food, shelter, etc.
Okay, actually the reason I asked that question is that is quite unique word that only be used for those human rights situations. It's not used the term that prevail in other situations. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your very passionate presentation, and it sounds to me like you're talking about regime change in a way, and I think this is a more practical implementation question that if we think of the UPR as a very state-centric process, right, that's why we have all the flags on our desks. You mentioned a political problem and a technical problem. One, North Korea lacks the physical infrastructure. Second, though, there's a reason they don't let people travel around because of exactly what you said. They'll talk, they'll communicate, they'll form rebel groups and overthrow the government. I think in your paper especially, I would like to see a little bit more explanation how North Korea can be engaged in this UPR process, because North Korea knows this as well. And how can we maximize the protection of human rights so that North Korea agrees without being so obvious that regime change is the end goal? And maybe I'm just curious in your ideas of how can we sweeten the deal for North Korean government officials in the UPR to listen to these recommendations that you are proposing. Thank you.
So the question is how do we incentivize North Korean government to be part of the UPR? That's, as I said, marketization has gone off the hand of North Korean government. Now they cannot really control the state anymore. So the marketization will lead people to have more voice because they have more money. They'll be asking for government, more changes, better roads, etc. Therefore, North Korean government right now doesn't have much choice but to be integrated in the international society and accept the international society as the request aid. Therefore, that's why this is a really great time to have North Korea, ask North Korea for the change and be part of UPR, because right now they cannot stop the process, the speed of development. So they'll be in a position where they have to get into the UPR. Otherwise, they won't be able to get the international aid. They won't be able to monitor the things they need to do.
Excellent. And I would just maybe wonder too about if you had a choice between the technical aspect and the political aspect, which one do you think should be pushed harder or more obviously at the UPR level?
This actually correlates to your previous question, how can you protect human rights issues in North Korea? I think it should be technical matters first, because if you want to attack a political issue, North Korea will act as how I acted today, like sovereignty issue, you can't do that. So if it goes to technical issue, it will naturally lead to the political issue, because more people using the road, it will lead to more people asking for change, more unified voice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again, and I'd like to thank the four presenters who gave us very insightful presentations. Now we're going to have a 10-minute break before we move on to the comments from the juries.